The text for this morning's sermon comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 6, verses 1 through 3. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men. A man to whom God hath given riches, wealth, and honor, so that he wanteth nothing for his soul of all that he desireth. Yet God giveth him not power to eat thereof, but a stranger eateth it. This is vanity, and it is an evil disease. If a man beget 100 children and live many years, so that the days of his years be many, and his soul be not filled with good, and also that he have no burial, I say that an untimely birth is better than he.
All right. As you find your place there, let's go ahead and go to the Lord in a word of prayer. And ask Him to be with us today. Oh Lord, I cry unto Thee, be not silent unto me. Lest if you be silent unto me, I be like those that go down into the pit. Lord, as I think about those words of David, Lord, it's not just important that we pray, but God, we thank you that you're a God that can hear our prayer. You can deliver us, you can comfort us, you can guide us, you can save us. Even God, sometimes in saving us from ourselves. But God, we just want to thank you for that love of God that is so vast, that is so wide. God, we thank you for it. And Lord, we come to you this morning as people that are needy. God, sometimes as people that we really just make our wants our needs. And God, I pray just in listening to Brother Greg and also in seeing the report this morning, God, about those missionaries and those wives, those children, Lord, that have been taken. God, sometimes it's hard for us to wrap our brain around that. But God, it should make us thankful for where we live and what we enjoy. But God, also realize that there are more important things in life than just our wants. And God, I pray for those families this morning. Lord, we do ask if it be your will, you would deliver them all safely. But God, the hard part of that prayer is if it's not your will, that you would give them peace, God, as they enter into eternity. That you would be with that situation. God, we don't know what to pray for us other than just for you to be God and God alone. And Lord, as we take your word this morning and we try to listen a little bit more to what you said through Solomon, I pray, God, that you would give us exactly what we need. Lord, you help us. Thank you for all you do, God. I pray you might use me in spite of me. Forgive me of my shortcomings, my sin, my failure. That you might use me, Lord. Thank you for all you do in Christ's name. Amen. Well, we're in Ecclesiastes chapter number 6 as we continue our series and going through this book. And when we start, in particular, this chapter, I told you last week as we were in chapter 5, that chapter 5 and 6, Solomon kind of takes a little bit of a respite from lamenting that everything in the world is useless, as we saw. And last week we had the idea of looking at how Solomon really, in the first few verses, was talking about in life, it's important that you watch your feet. It's important that you guard your steps, that the direction of your steps is the direction that you're heading in life. And we saw a lot of things that really came into play there, and about how you don't vow to God if you're not going to pay it. Instead, more than just saying words, it's living the life. And as we get into the end of chapter 5, and really as we look at most of, if time allows today, chapter 6, this kind of reminds me, this chapter is, if you got a group of friends, Solomon is doing this. Do you have that friend in your friend group that is just brutally honest with you? Like they are that person that loves you enough to not sugarcoat it. They're just going to say, this is what it is. In fact, you never love it in the moment. You just tell them later, I love you. I just don't like you a whole lot right now. Because of that, they're brutally honest. And if you're thinking to yourself, no, I don't have anybody in my friend group that's that way. You're that person, okay? Just go ahead and let you know. You are probably that one. It's kind of like the joke someone said, that every friend group has that one person that will turn a 30-second conversation into 30 minutes. They'll talk and talk and go on and go on. And again, if you're thinking, we don't have somebody in my friend group, you're probably that person. But anyhow, but Solomon today, and what we're going to look at, is pretty honest. And he wants to be very serious about some things in our life that we look for in the area of being satisfied and satisfaction. And what we're going to look at today really is even some of the examples that he gives in this passage of Scripture are pretty heart-wrenching, but I think it's important for us today. So Solomon's going to play the part where he does a lot of just, let me be honest with you. And as we get into chapter 7, we get into more of the wisdom and the granddaddy kind of passing down wisdom. But he's going to be really honest this morning, and I hope it's a help to you as I've been studying and the Lord's really showed me some things. And this idea of, are you satisfied? Immanuel Kant said this. He said, give a man everything he wants, and at that moment, everything will not be everything. Give a man everything he wants, and in that moment, everything will not be everything. There's a story of an airline pilot that was flying over the Smoky Mountains in Tennessee. He was flying over the Smoky Mountains, and he pointed out a little small lake to his co-pilot. And he said, you see that little lake? He said, when I was a kid, I used to sit in a rowboat down there fishing. And every time a plane would fly overhead, I'd look up and say, man, I wish I could fly. He says, now I look down and wish I was in a little rowboat fishing, just enjoying life. And satisfaction is what we're going to talk about today. And satisfaction is an elusive pursuit. We go after what we think will make us happy, and only to find out that it doesn't. Solomon's a guy that obviously was that way. Solomon talks about everything he did. He had the party scene that we talked about. We had these feasts, these parties nightly, 7 days a week, several times a month that he would have these parties that would host 15 to 20,000 people that he had. And he went from there to the building phase where he built houses for all of his wives, all 700 wives. He built a house for himself. He did national forests. He put in vineyards. He did everything you could do. He did all these little things. He even went to the idea of luxury and ease. He didn't do anything for himself that he did. Nothing that happened. Everyone waited on him hand and foot. And it just seemed like everything that you could get, and Solomon is really going into it in chapter 6 and saying, at the end, it's not enough. Because often we're happier before we started the quest. I kind of look at it like this. Some of you may differ with me in this. When it gets close to like Christmas time, you kind of get that excitement. Some of you do. Some of you are like, uh-oh. But you know, you get into this Christmas time and you're excited about it. You're excited about the gifts and you're excited about the meals. And you're excited about getting together with family. And some of you are like, not me. But you know, you're excited about all these things. And do you ever sometimes hit about 1 or 2 o'clock on Christmas Day and like, that's it? It's over. The meals have been eaten. The kids have demolished every bit of gifts that we've gotten. The dads are surprised because they're also finding out what the gifts are at the same time the children do. That happens in my house a lot. But anyhow, so all that happens. Do you know what I mean? Like you almost get the Christmas night and you kind of sometimes feel like, it's over. Like all the excitement built up for this and it's it. And Solomon's saying, if we're not careful, the things that we pursue in life that we think are going to make us happy, when we finally get them, it doesn't make us happy. It's kind of like this. You ever seen a dog like chase like a car or something like that? And it just looks like if that dog could just catch that car, that dog would be happy. You don't realize it's not going to be real happy for the dog. Our dog Sadie loves squirrels. I mean, she sees squirrels and we open the door and she makes a beeline for these little things that we don't think she's ever going to catch. And one day we're sitting on the front porch and one squirrel got a little too far away from the tree. And Sadie spotted it. And Sadie was already on that squirrel before that squirrel realized it. And all of a sudden, all I saw is Sadie swipe at that squirrel. And the squirrel just kind of flies through the air for a little bit like that. Some of you are upset. It's okay. Everybody's all right, okay? All right. And so finally she got it and she grabbed the squirrel. She didn't know what to do with it. So the squirrel just hopped out, went up the tree. And probably thank God from whom all blessings flow. They got to enjoy another day. Not those things. But you know what? That dog has went day after day, morning after morning. Just open that door, Phil. Open that door. Let me go. Let me go. Let me go. But when she finally got the squirrel, or what she was chasing, it was like, now what? Now what do I do with it? You know, what's the big deal with it, right? And by the way, don't we live today, if there's any other time we live today, in so much of a disposable world where things, and let's be honest, relationships and people, a lot of times, become so disposable that when we finally get them and we enjoy what little bit we think we'll enjoy out of it, we're like, And we find out the pursuit sometimes is even better than the actual thing. And it's really an issue that we have, is that it's possible, I think, that a person can have all that he or she desires and still not find satisfaction. And I think the lack of satisfaction is a pandemic. And we see this really in an astronomical rate, talking about Christmas. What happens at Christmas? They say credit card debt goes through the roof at Christmas. Why? Because you got to have these gifts. You got to have this thing. And so you run up and you buy gifts. We always joke, you buy stuff for people you don't like and all that kind of stuff. And you do all these different things. And you spend money that you don't have for people you don't like and all that good stuff. And then you do that. And then what happens after it's all over? The anxiety of now, how do I pay for it? How do I pay for what I just did? And so we find ourselves and not with dissatisfaction. You know, like I said, you see that in relationships. You see it a lot of ways, how people can take relationships, and when the relationship doesn't go the way they want, they throw it away, and all these different things. You know, it's even like the issue, the main issue behind the lottery is that everybody, I want to win the big one, I want to win the big one, I want to win the big one. Have you noticed or ever read about the suicide rate of lottery winners? Those that actually win the lottery? They said it's a pretty high, I think it's like 34% of the people that win the big payout commit suicide within 10 years. Because they have this anxiety now of somebody wants my money and somebody wants this, and what do I chase in life? I heard about one person that they played the lottery, little cheap lottery that they did, and they did it for years. They paid $5 every Friday, and they went and played the lottery, and finally did it for years, and they finally won a $10,000 ticket. And the people were asking her and said, hey, what are you going to do now that you won the $10,000? You finally got it. She goes, I'm going to play again next Friday. And they're like, why would you do that? She's like, it was cool to win, but I enjoyed the chase. And see, what happened is she got what she wanted, but it still wasn't enough. And if I can be honest, a lot of times in our lives, it's not just the unbelievers that are chasing the things for satisfaction that don't bring satisfaction. It's us as believers. And here's why I'm talking about the person in your family or the person in your friend group that's brutally honest with you. Because here's the thing about what we're going to look at today. Every one of us, for the most part, if not all of us, know the answers to what we're going to look at today. We know the answers to the questions. We know what is right, what is wrong, what is life-giving, what is not. But if we're honest, we live a lot of times a little differently Monday through Saturday than what we do for this hour and a half in here. Because we know the answer. We call it the Sunday school answers. But we're going to look at some things here. And I want to ask you, are you satisfied in your life right now? I didn't say one day, but right now in your life, are you satisfied? Just to borrow another music thing, Bono said this. He said, I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I say that just because some of you have asked Phil, we hadn't heard a music reference in a while. I heard a comedian say one time, that's not the right song to sing at a wedding, but anyhow, we'll keep going. But in Ecclesiastes chapter 6, Solomon for a moment is going to say, I got everything I wanted, and the world was not enough. I got the world. You think about in Solomon's day, there was nothing, he said, that his eyes did not see, his heart did not desire, that he did not have. In everything in life, and anything you can think of, you say, well, did he have, what about this? He had it. What about that? Had it. And the t-shirt. I mean, everything that you could think of, he had those things. And I want to ask you, think of us, in your life right now, would you say that you are content? Would you say right now in your life that you feel fulfilled, that you feel satisfied? And what is it that you believe, if you're not, that you need to make you satisfied? And do you think that it really would do that if you got it? Or do you feel like just like a dog chasing a car? That you're chasing it, but at the end, it's really not going to give you what you're looking for. And we always get in that rut sometimes of chasing things. And in these 12 verses of this chapter, Solomon's really just going to show the emptiness of honestly several categories of our lives that we think bring satisfaction, but they don't. And Solomon knows they don't because they didn't for Solomon. Let's look in verse number 1. He says, there is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men. When he says it's common, this idea here means it is as prevalent among men. He's basically saying it's rare to walk this earth and to find people who are content, to find people who are satisfied. And he says desires always seem to be stronger than satisfaction, don't they? Don't your desire always seem to be more than your satisfaction that you get from those desires? And as we walk kind of this restless pace on earth, a lot of times we're full of desire and we're never really satisfied. And the world is not enough. Jonathan Clements said this. He says, we may have life and liberty, but the pursuit of happiness isn't going so well. We may have life and liberty, but the pursuit of happiness isn't going so well. He goes on to say, we constantly hanker after fancier cars and fatter paychecks, and initially, such things boost our happiness, but the glow of satisfaction quickly fades, and soon we're yearning for something else. As we looked at last week, like we said, we have to watch the direction of our feet. We stopped around verse number 8, but in verse number 9, I want to see how Solomon continues to talk about this idea of how prosperity doesn't satisfy. In chapter 5 of Ecclesiastes, verse 10, he says, he that loveth silver shall not be satisfied with silver, nor he that loveth abundance with increase. This is also vanity, or emptiness, or uselessness. He's saying that prosperity doesn't satisfy. And finally, Solomon goes on and he's talking about he who loves money will not be satisfied with money. And after considering that prosperity doesn't satisfy, he finally, at the end of chapter 5 that we didn't look at last week, he eventually says there's only one way to find satisfaction in life, and this is part of the Sunday school answer, is to trust in God for your joy. To trust in God in your joy and contentment. Look in verse 18 through 20 of the last 3 verses of chapter number 5. Solomon says this. He finally gets the realization of it. He says, behold, that which I have seen, it is good and comely for one to eat and to drink and to enjoy the good of all of his labor that he had taken under the sun all the days of his life, which God giveth him, for it is his portion. Every man also to whom God hath given riches and wealth, and hath given him power to eat thereof, and to take his portion, and to rejoice in his labor, this is the gift of God. For he shall not much remember the days of his life, because God answereth him in the joy of his heart. So Solomon says here that this idea of satisfaction in things does not last, but at the end of the day, satisfaction in things is that we can enjoy things. Now I want to tell you, because some of us have grown up in a society and an idea and a spiritual culture that says if you have things in life, you ought to hate them. You never can enjoy anything in life. And let me tell you, that's contrary to what the Bible says here. The Bible says every good gift and every perfect gift is from above. That God gives us things in our lives that we are to enjoy, but they're at the end. They're not the end goal. They're not what we're looking for to give us true joy in life. And that's why he says in verse 19, he says, this is a gift of God. It's a gift of God, those things that you have to enjoy, but they're not the end result. They're not the ultimate ends for the means. And Solomon said, by the way, I think when you get in chapter 6, Solomon didn't stay satisfied very long, because he starts lamenting, and he says problems, as you see in verse 1, under the sun. You see that phrase a lot in this passage. And in the passages that we read here is something under the sun. And that's the core issue of why Solomon's dissatisfied, because he's looking at life from the world's perspective. Let me kind of say it like this. If you look at life horizontally, this world is going to be a miserable place. Amen. If your only view of what happens in this world is all based on man, it's all based on circumstances, and there's never an eternal, God, Christ-centered perspective. If you live a horizontal view of life, it will be a miserable life. It'll be like the worst roller coaster you've ever been on, because those high moments will only last a second, because you'll feel like you're crashing down to earth most of the time. And they'll seem fleeting. And in chapter 6, Solomon here is going to list out a series of disappointments, if you will. Things that also he left him deeply dissatisfied in. And many of these things are the things that we think will satisfy us, but as Solomon learned, they don't. And this is kind of a warning to us to not go down the same dead-end street. Have you ever done that? Like you're going down the road and your GPS is failing you, or maybe it's failing you because it doesn't work, or maybe it's failing you because it tells you the wrong place. And you're like, I'm going to cut through here real quick, and you cut down the road only to get to a dead end, and now you've lost more time than you thought you were making. And what Solomon is going to say here, there's some things in life that don't bring satisfaction, and if you keep chasing them, you're going to get to that dead-end street. By the way, the GPS thing was really funny. I went to preach one time when I was in South Carolina, and it says turn left, and we were like way late. By the way, there's not a worse feeling. You think it feels bad to walk in church late? Be the guy that's supposed to be speaking. Okay, so it's almost time for it to start. We're in the middle of nowhere, and it says, turn left here. That was a farmer's field. You ever had the argument with the GPS right there? I had the argument. I didn't win. I totally missed the service. Missed the service. And the bad thing is the pastor was out of town, so it wasn't like the pastor was there and could do what, we always talk about having one on the burner. There was no one on the burner. And I felt really bad about that. And I just called one of the deacons and said, hey, I am lost. I would really like for you to tell me where I'm at in the world right now, but he couldn't tell me. And I said, I'm really sorry. So we drove the hour or whatever back home. Funny enough, they called me and asked me to come back another time. I don't know why they did that, other than to just laugh at me. They said there wasn't a lot of satisfaction there. That is true. But I want you this morning, brothers and sisters, for a moment. You know what I'm about to tell you. You know what we're about to talk about here that does not bring satisfaction. So the temptation for you today is not to brush this off, as I know that, but to, as Paul says, to examine yourselves in these things. And I hope you do that. Some things that do not bring satisfaction. Number one is this. Social status does not bring satisfaction. Social status or honor does not bring satisfaction. Let's look in verse 1 and 2 again. There is an evil which I have seen under the sun, and it is common among men, a man to whom God hath given riches, wealth, and honor, so that he wanteth nothing for his soul of all that he hath desired. Yet God giveth him not power to eat thereof, or it means to enjoy it. But a stranger eateth it. This is vanity, and is an evil disease. Lily Tomlin said this, I've always wanted to be somebody, but now I realize I should have been more specific. I always wanted to be somebody, but I should have been more specific. And the underlying truth in that is this, is that she's like, I became somebody, but I wasn't really happy with the person I became. You ever sometimes feel that way? I want to be somebody in this world. I want to be somebody in my neighborhood. I want to be somebody on my job. I want to be somebody in church. I want to be somebody in my family. And that passion is real, but why do you want to be that person? Why is it that you desire that status? And by the way, we live in a world today that's obsessed with celebrity status. Remember the rich and famous, as they used to always say. And I realized in looking at it, do you know, not news outlets, but entertainment news, there are 44 entertainment news broadcasts just in our country alone that studies the life, the power, the fame, the status of what we would call rich, famous people, celebrity people. 44. That's what they do. And most of us, let's be honest, want to be somebody. And our world is obsessed with that. What kind of car do you drive? Where do you live? The clothes that you wear, the job title. Are you tan enough? Is your hairstyle cool enough? What school do your kids attend? I mean, it's an endless list of things. You ever sometimes get tired of trying to be good enough? My question is this. It's not, are you tired of it? But who are you trying to impress? Who are we trying to impress? What are we trying to keep up with in that process? It's an endless list, and it's about a status that does not satisfy. Solomon kind of shares a very tragic autobiographical glimpse here. He had the world, and he says some interesting things here. He says in the end of verse 2, he says, I had everything anyone would say is important, but he says this. Look in verse number 2 again. He says, yet God giveth him not the power to eat thereof. You know what he's saying? I had everything that I could have, but God did not give me the power to enjoy it. God let me go ahead and have all that stuff I wanted, but God would not give me the ability to enjoy those things. That's kind of an amazing thing, right? You say, well, I don't really believe God would do that. You ever get that thing you really wanted in life and you know it's a selfish ambition, just to be honest with us, we're just being honest. But at the end, you really never could enjoy it. That's God saying, okay, if that's going to be your idol, I'll let it be your idol. But I'm not going to allow you to enjoy it. I'm not going to allow it to bring that fulfillment that you think it would bring. And Solomon's saying here, he said, I had everything but satisfaction in life. And the cynic would say that's kind of a cruel or an unfair twist, that God would give someone some things, yet remove that joy or the ability for that person to enjoy those things. And even deeper, if you saw the end of verse 2, what does he say after that? He said, but a stranger eateth it. What he's saying here is this. He's saying, I got all these things, but God would not allow me to enjoy it, to the point it was even more misery knowing that people after me would enjoy it. He said a stranger would enjoy it. And he's saying the reason he can't enjoy it is because a stranger ripped off the enjoyment. Now, by the way, and I think we could say this, the stranger here is never identified. The stranger could be a person, could be an adversary, something personal enemy who gave him grief. And by the way, a stranger that can rob him of his joy, hey, it could have been sickness. It could have been the idea he didn't no longer enjoy good health. Maybe the stranger is something that attacked his body as far as health. Maybe it was a domestic conflict that he had. By the way, there's nothing more troubling at home than to have everything you want, but not have a good relationship within the walls in which you live. You can have every picture, you can have every plate, you can have every number on the bank account that you want, you can have everything work out great, but if there's strife in the home, we all know what? Pretty meaningless, right? There's something that's missing. There's something larger that is missing. Maybe that stranger could be something like death. Maybe more than one person, can we just be honest, that we've read about that have worked hard and made money and all these things, their goal to only retire and a few months later get cancer or die of a heart attack. And they worked so hard for all this part of life to enjoy this little bit. And God says, no, you chased the wrong things. You're chasing the wrong things, and a tragic end. Solomon calls it a grievous evil, and that social status does not bring satisfaction. Of course, you could always talk about social media and those things, and there's good with those things and there's bad with those things. But let's be honest, a lot of times people post and do stuff, a lot of times, why? Because they want those likes, they want those comments, they want those different things in life because they want that honor. They want that recognition. They want to be recognized as somebody. They want those things. And can we just say that social status cannot guarantee satisfaction? Without God, we're still discontent. It's only when God is at the center of our lives that we experience real joy in the gifts that God gives. God will give us gifts, but it's only when God is at the center point of our life that we can enjoy those things. The Bible says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but can I tell you, the fear of the Lord is not only just the beginning of knowledge, it's also the true source for satisfaction. So number one, we see that social status does not bring satisfaction. Number two, and this may come a little shocking, but I think if we go down the road, we understand. Number two, family or relationships do not bring satisfaction. Family relationships do not bring satisfaction. And Solomon uses two illustrations here to really drive home a point about attempting to find satisfaction in life, in relationships, but apart from God. And the first he's going to see is the family, and second we'll see is longevity here. Let's look in verse number 3 through 6. He says, if a man beget or a man fathers 100 children and live many years, so that the days of his years be many, and his soul be not filled with good, and also that he have no burial, I say that an untimely birth is better than he. For he cometh in with vanity and departeth in darkness, and his name shall be covered with darkness. Moreover, he hath not seen the sun, nor anything, or known anything. This hath more rest than the other. Verse 6 says, yea, though he live 1,000 years twice told, yet hath he seen no good. Do not all go to one place? And so let me just kind of share this with you. What he's saying here is, we're going to look at the first part about how family relationships do not bring satisfaction. Can we just be honest and say sometimes just having a family in itself apart from God will not give you long-lasting satisfaction? In the Bible days, and think about what he's speaking to here. In the Bible days, having lots of children was a sign of God's blessing. So we read about Abraham and Sarah, like, oh, they didn't have a kid. Oh, God gave a kid. That was really great. No, you have to understand the culture and the people he's talking to. In this culture, having many children was an idea of God's blessing on their life. And by the way, you got to think about it. They also, for the most part, are very practical. They grew up in a very much farming culture or dealing with animals and different things that they did. More children meant you were more successful as a farmer in that. And also is an economic asset to it. In the culture then, in those days, you had to defend your family. And by the way, if you had a lot of kids, you kind of got an in-home army right there that you could have to kind of help defend you, to help take advantage, and you wasn't by yourself. And I don't know if you noticed that Solomon says if a man begat 100 children, some people think Solomon's speaking hypothetically, but Solomon had 700 wives and 300 concubines. I don't really know. You know, who knows? Maybe he was being literal having 100 children. I don't know. It's probable that he just threw the number out as a symbolic of something very huge family. Or, by the way, can you imagine that Christmas? Anyway, and so just that family. But he's saying here, even in the idea that in a culture where it says having a large family, but lots of children, he's saying it doesn't guarantee fulfillment. Now I'm going to say this, and I want you to be with me, okay? And I want you to follow me to the end. Marriage, family, and children do not necessarily bring satisfaction to your life. I'm not saying these aren't good things. I'm not saying these aren't godly things. The Bible says children are an heritage of the Lord. They're great things. But in the end, they cannot be the end all of all your joy, all your peace, all your happiness. Because if you think about it, and some of you I know have walked down some of these roads, if all of your joy and hope and peace is in a marriage or in children or in a relationship, you're asking them to be what they cannot be. I cannot ask my kids to be the joy that only God can give me. I can't ask my spouse to do something that only God can do.
That's right.
I can't ask my friends to be what only the Holy Spirit can be for me. Now, by the way, thank God for family. Thank God for friends. And by the way, we know some of our closest family is not blood. It's sometimes fellow believers, it's fellow friends, it's fellow people in life. But we have to understand that that doesn't mean it's going to bring satisfaction. I tell you like this, and just over the years of getting to talk with people, if you're miserable in your marriage, having a child is not going to make all the misery go away. I laugh at that idea sometimes. We're not getting along very good. Let's have kids. Well, at least you had sleep, right? And now you don't have that. You say, Phil, you tell them not to have kids. No. But having a kid wasn't the answer. You understand what I'm saying? You're asking for something to do what it wasn't made to do. You're asking for that. And a lot of times, couples with marital trouble will make a huge blunder because they're having all these problems and they think if we just have a kid, man, life will be great. And let's just be honest, because this is what you see a lot in our culture. You need to understand something. Because sometimes people say children are the glue in a family, but can I be honest with you? A lot of times, children aren't the glue. They're only a diversion. And that's why you see the divorce rate among empty nesters go through the roof. Because they have the child, they ignore all the marital issues they're having, they never get to the root of it. And so they have a kid, so what they can do, divert all their attention, all their energy to that child. And some of y'all with little kids are like, man, all my attention, I don't know if it gets a lot better when they get bigger, but just all your attention goes there. To only when the children are gone, you're still sitting there needing to pay the check. You're still sitting there with the bill or the problem, and you still got to deal with it. And all you did is put an 18 to 20 year hold on it. You got to deal with the issue. I know you may know people or maybe been through the situation in life is to understand that. You say, well, if we just focus on the children, that will help. Sometimes it helps. In the end, normally avoiding your problems in your marriage, dumping it and diverting it and just focusing on your kids isn't going to help. You got to deal with the issue. You got to deal with the issue. And can I tell you, in your life, even this way, and understand what I mean when I say this, if you're a parent, you understand this. There's few things in life that can break your heart than your children. When your children hurt, when your children are going through things, and let's just be honest, sometimes when the children hurt you. And so to say the great escape is to have kids is to ultimately say I'm willing to bring on more misery and more anxiety and more everything to just gloss over what the real problem is inside of myself. And that's what he says here. And by the way, Solomon even kind of exaggerates to make his point. He says you can have 100 kids. You can have more kids than anyone else. But if God's not involved and God's not the center of it, it will not give you satisfaction. It's vanity. And Solomon even goes a step further. And I don't know if you saw this. But he gives a little shock value. Particularly in a culture that he's talking to that highly values children. He says this, I don't know if you saw this, at the end of verse number 3. He says, and I say that an untimely birth is better than talking about the one that has 100 kids. Can I tell you what that means? He's saying that even a miscarriage is better off than that person that just has 100 kids. Pretty much a shock and all there. Now, I got to be careful here because we don't want to misread Solomon at this point. He's not arguing that a literal miscarriage of a child is a good thing. It's an analogy, a philosophical, not literal. And I don't want you to dance around this text because this is that brutal, honest part of Solomon that's coming out. Because what he's talking about here, this idea of miscarriage, and like I said, I don't want to be insensitive here. We all know people who have suffered the tragedy of that. Rachel and I have experienced that with our first. We understand the gut-wrenching tragedy that is, to experience it. And by the way, if you've experienced it, I just want to tell you right off the bat, I'm sorry for what you've been through. There's not a whole lot greater pain than that. And I hurt for you. And I want you to know as a family, as a church family, we hurt for you. We love you. We want to help you through those things because those are horrible things to go through. But what Solomon's saying here, he's saying it's more tragic for someone to be given life and possessions and honor and riches and not be able to enjoy those things than the tragedy of a miscarriage. Solomon recognizes that both are tragic. He's not minimizing. He's emphasizing through this shocking comparison that it's a tragedy of life to get everything you want but never be satisfied. He said it's a greater tragedy to get everything you think you want in life and to never be satisfied. He said that's the greater tragedy in that. And he's saying for a person not to be able to enjoy those things, it's worse than an infant that never got to experience life. I think if you could say it like this, it's better to miscarry at birth than to miscarry throughout your whole life, is what Solomon's saying. Something I've underlined in my Bible, but I hope it's a help to you, is this. Satisfaction is found by first enjoying God, then His blessings, not the other way around. Satisfaction is found by first enjoying God, then His blessings. The problem is in life we swap that. I want to enjoy the blessings of God, and if I enjoy the blessings of God, I might appreciate and love a little bit more God Himself. So when the blessings aren't coming the way we want, we don't love and respect and enjoy God the way we should. But when we can learn to love God for who He is, we can be like a Job. We can be like somebody that through the good times and the bad times, we still cling to the love that we have for God because we know we love Him because why? He first loved us. See, satisfaction doesn't come in everything in life coming from the blessings of God. The satisfaction in life comes from loving God, regardless of what happens in the life. And that there's no ultimate satisfaction in what he calls here this under the sun living. And can I just say, the ability to enjoy life comes within. And when I mean that, I mean it's a God thing. It's a matter of character, not circumstances. Philippians 4:11, Paul says, I have learned for whatsoever state I am therewith to be content. Content there, what Paul says, means to be self-sustained, adequate, needing nothing from the outside. And within Paul's soul, he's saying here, I have learned in whatever situation I am to be content because of what the Holy Spirit has done in my life. That's why he can say 2 verses later, I can do all things through Christ, who strengthens me. I can be abased, I can be brought low, and I can excel. I can abound. And to understand what Solomon is trying to say, we have to step outside a little bit of our current mindset and culture and realize this. And I know it's a longer point. But we need to realize something, is that children, and I think we see this a lot, children are not an inconvenience. And we live in a culture today with some parents that children just are an inconvenience. And that's not what Scripture teaches. We also need to realize they're not just a financial burden. You say, Phil, you do not see my grocery bill. I got 3 teens, man. I know all about what you're talking about right now. I know about the grocery bill. I don't, Rachel, buy that. I mean, I just see numbers, right? But can I tell you something I think probably hits more home? I don't think we probably are in that realm of thinking that children are a burden or something like that. I tell you what I think the American church and American society and American Christian families struggle with is this idea that children are not to be our idols either. If we're not careful, we will deify the family. We'll make the family what it's not supposed to be. I thank God for my family, but may I tell you, I should never put my family above and what my family wants and desires above what God desires, directs, and gives me in my life. And by the way, be careful when you do that. When you put your family above God, you're putting an idol up that God says is not supposed to be there. You say, well, I don't really idolize my family. I really want to go here. When it's more important for you to have a family day than it is to go to the house of God, what are you telling God is more important? I ain't saying don't have a vacation. I'm not saying get away a little bit. I am not saying that. But I know good people that I love in this town that will not come to church on a Sunday because they work 6 days a week. And Sunday's the only day they can be together as a family. And my response is that how better to spend an hour and a half than worshiping with your family together in God's house. The one that gave you the family, the one that gave you the job.
Amen.
You say that lets you know we do not lift up. Let's not make idols out of our kids. Let's not make idols out of our relationships. Because as Job said, there is a God that gives, but there also is a God that takes away. Because he will not be mocked. You say, Phil, I don't like what you're saying here. I'm just trying to tell us at the end of the day, sometimes we make idols out of things that have no place to be that high on the list. And again, I'm not telling you don't pull away with your family. I'm not telling you not to do that. But don't let your family be the reason or the excuse for why you don't obey God in your life. Don't let your family be the reason why you disobey God, what God gives you to do in his life. And I'm not just talking about church. I'm talking about anything in your life that you know is what God would have you do. And you know would please God. Don't let your family be the excuse for that. Don't let it be what it's not meant to be. And a lot of times as Christians, we revolve around family and we neglect God. We need to remember that. And remember that those family and those loved ones, today in our life, we know, and as we know, as we get older, our circle gets smaller. And satisfaction is found by enjoying God and then his blessings. And I'm telling you, if you reverse that, you're going to be in trouble. You'll be in trouble. We'll go on number 3. The next thing is this, and it's in these verses as well, is that longevity does not bring satisfaction. Longevity does not bring satisfaction. Austin Burroughs said this. He says, when you have your health, you have everything. When you do not have your health, nothing else matters. And I agree with him to an extent. But I'd also would say this. What about the healthy inmate that's sitting on death row? What about that inmate that has their health but is sitting in prison because of choices in life, and all they're going to do is live out many, many more years with good health, but they're not going to be able to do anything with their life? Look again in verse number 6. He says, yea, though he live 1,000 years, twice told, yet hath he seen no good. Do not all go to one place. Solomon's point is this, is that long life isn't a blessing. It can be miserable if it's all about you. That long life isn't always a blessing. That longevity isn't everything. And Solomon writes about living a long life, but he's talking about living a long life is not an end of itself. And really the great tragedy here is to live a long life that's really a life not worth living. Because long life isn't the goal. And it even goes back to what he's saying in verse 3. He says, better to never breathe a breath than to live a long life that doesn't please God. It'd be better to not even live but moments than to live a long life, a life that's not pleasing to God. And that's what he's talking about in verse number 3. I don't know if you noticed that in verse 3, he also said this. He said, and his soul shall not be filled with good, also that he hath no burial. Now, let me kind of explain something to you here about this. What he's saying is it's better to have a wake for a nameless child than a state funeral for a person who blew off God all their life. See, Solomon is talking a little bit about no burial, and for the Jewish people, to not have a burial was a great sign of disrespect and dishonor. To not have a burial. In fact, in Jeremiah 22, it tells of King Jehoiakim, who was not given a burial, and that happened because of how his people disrespected him. They didn't even give him a burial. And what Solomon's saying here in this fictional character, if you would, he's saying that this person could live a long time, have lots of children, and in the end, his family wants nothing to do with him, and when he died, they didn't even give him a burial. What kind of life is that? I know people, even in my extended family, that have pretty much everything a person could want. But the way they've treated people, and the way they push out people, that when they pass away, we almost even wonder, will we even know about it? And there'll be no grand funeral for that. Because all their life was about them and about forget everyone else and forget God. And when you think about these things, Solomon's saying, he said, what kind of life is that? Even if you die in disrespect. You die alone in that way. And what Solomon's saying is that I think we all want to live a long life. You're saying, Phil, you're talking about death. I'm not looking to go in the next load, okay? I'm kind of want to live a long time. I joke with you, I want to be the guy sitting on the rocking chair complaining about the cars driving too fast and the music too loud. I want to be that guy. I want to be old with gray hair. Later, with gray hair or whatever that stuff later. I want to have that. But he's saying, imagine living 20 centuries of misery. Imagine living 20 centuries of dissatisfaction. Yeah, you lived it. But you were unsatisfied your whole life. Because you're chasing the wrong things in those things. And Solomon's saying, you need to listen to this. Satisfaction does not come just with long life, especially if that long life comes without God. Number 4, we see this. I'll hurry on. Careers do not bring satisfaction. Look in verse number 7. He says, all the labor of man is for his mouth, and yet the appetite is not filled. For what hath the wise more than the fool? What hath the poor that knoweth to walk before the living? Better is the sight of the eyes than the wandering of the desire. This is also vanity and vexation of spirit. And we were talking about careers being that, and I know we need to work. In fact, we live in a day, it'd be nice if more people would actually go to work. I get that. I understand that. Okay? Some of you are like, please don't discourage people from working. I'm not doing that, okay? I'm not doing that. But they did a survey in USA Today that said a couple years ago before the pandemic and everything happened, and 71% of people in their jobs said that they are not engaged or actively disengaged from their jobs because of what they would call work boredom. They just do work because they got to do it. They're bored in what they do. And you think about it, each year, each spring, we celebrate graduation from either high school or college or whatever it is, and young people looking for a career, and that's good. And what they do, and they have to have things that they do, things that they work, and their jobs they do, but we have to remember in itself that ultimately that job will not bring fulfillment. The ultimate fulfillment. You get joy in what you do. You can get joy in what you work. By the way, don't work at a job you hate, okay? I meet too many of those people going through the drive-thru, okay? Don't work at a job you hate, okay? I'm just kind of like, no offense, if a police officer pulls me over, I don't say anything. I just smile, thank you for the bag, and go on. I don't want to ask for it back. But you know what I mean? Do you notice people that live lives and work 40, 50, 60 hours a week, and they hate their job? They hate what they do. Now, don't get me wrong. There's seasons of life. You got to put your head down. You got to do what you're supposed to do. I'm not saying that. Some of you are like, Bill just told me, hey, baby, I can never work again. All right, that is not what I said. Some of y'all started taking notes as fast as you could when I said that. That's not what I said. But what I am saying is you can work that job. That is a great job. It's God's will for whatever your job is and your career path, whatever you do. But if you're looking for that at the end when you retire, to give you lasting enjoyment and fulfillment, you're going to wake up one day going, what do I do now? And where is that joy going to come from? And like I said, but there's the other aspect of it is the idea of working is some of us love our jobs. I like my job. Some of you are like, good, do you like your job? I do like my job. Ecclesiastes doesn't make it sound like I do, but I do like my job. But at the end of the day, it all can't be all about the job. It can't all be about that job that you have. You do what you do. Because when you think about it, what does Solomon say here? He says, at the end of the day, you know what your job's for? Food. That we'll work for food? That's what it's about. Because here's what's going to happen. The guy that is working picking up garbage to the governor of the state. At the end of the day, you know what the paycheck's for? So I can eat. Because you know what's going to happen? You're going to eat. You know what's going to happen after you eat? You're going to get hungry again. Don't you ever wish you never got hungry again? But anyhow, you get hungry again. And that's why you keep working, right? Because you want to eat. And those things you have. Socrates said this, and some people think he was talking about marriage. I think he might have been talking about work. But Socrates said this. Someone asked him his opinion about marriage, and Socrates said this. He says, by all means marry. If you get a good wife, you become happy. If you get a bad wife, you'll become a philosopher. Kind of gives you an idea what Socrates was thinking. Poured his life into his work. And by the way, may I say this for a moment? Can I lean in and love you enough to say this? If you have problems at home, the worst thing you can do is ignore it and dive into your work. Because when you resurface from that, the problems are still going to be there. Now, I ain't saying you don't need a moment. You say, Phil, if I dive into it right now, I'm going to kill him. Okay, maybe give him a minute, okay? All right? But what I am saying is this. Even work can be a distraction from the real problems and things we're missing in life. The things that we're looking for satisfaction in life. And many of us believe that happiness comes from our circumstances. We say, if I just get that new job or get that promotion, and I want you to get all that. None of these are bad in itself, but they can't be the end all, okay, is what we're saying here. They will not give ultimate satisfaction in those things. You're like, well, if my boss was more sympathetic, if my children would only stop getting on my nerves, if I just had this, or if I just had that, if my work wasn't so demanding, if my life wasn't so hectic, if maybe my parents weren't so strict, if my teacher was more lenient, if my coworker would just work harder, and then my life would be better. At the end of the day, you're looking for satisfaction from places that's not going to give it to you. Trust me, I worked at places where I wish people picked up the slack a little bit when I worked, especially in college. But at the end of the day, that's not what it's about. That's not what satisfaction is about. And Solomon isn't critical of work. Remember, this is a guy that built 700 houses. This is a guy that built the temple of the Lord. This is the guy that built vineyards and planted forests and did all those things. This is a guy that says, hey, it is fruitful. And work is another gracious gift from God, by the way. That is something to realize. Your work, your career, it is another gracious gift from God. And it's a way that you can have fruitfulness. It's a way that he talks about that you can enjoy the fruit of your hand. There's nothing wrong with working hard and having things to enjoy in life. But there's a problem when the things in life have you. Because then you got to work harder because you got to keep the things that really have your heart. And that can't be what it's about. If you're like, Phil, I love my job. My life is great. Praise God for you. Stay the course. If you're like, Phil, I cannot believe tomorrow's Monday. Guess what? Monday's always coming. In my life, Sunday's always coming. In your life, Monday's always coming. Okay? Find what God wants you to do and do it. But don't make it God. Don't make it what it's not meant to be. I have to remember that my job is earthly, and it can give me joy, but joy is heavenly. A job is not ultimately what matters in life. And there's several things there I was going to say with that, but I'm going to skip down to number 5. Is that answers do not bring satisfaction. I'm not going to ask you to raise your hand, but I wonder how many of you are like me, type A. It's not enough for something to work. You need to know how it works, why it works, and you got to be able to put everything together. You do not like question marks. Okay, I'm going to ask you. How many of you don't care as long as it happens? How many of you need to know how it's going to happen? You got to see it from point A to point B. In fact, if there was an 8.1 and 8.2, you okay, good. All right, good. Hey, hopefully the two of you didn't marry. But it's a little separated there. I got it. Let's look at verse 10 through 12. That which hath been is named already, and it is known that it is man. He said, neither may be contend with him that is mightier than he, seeing there be many things that increase vanity. What is man the better? For who knoweth what is good for man in his life? All the days of his vain life which he spendeth as a shadow. For who can tell a man what shall be after him under the sun? So you kind of see a lot of really rough questions here in this list, and there's a lot of mystery, what I would say, in the Christian life. Not just as a parent, not just as a person, not just as a coworker, but in the Christian life, if we're honest, there's a lot of mysteries, isn't there? And it can be insanely frustrating. For them, for us, if you're like me, the Christian life, if we're not careful, it's got to be a Jenga game, right? It's got to be a Rubik's Cube. We got to be able to put everything together because we can't stand having mystery. We can't stand having unanswered questions. We got to be able to put it all together. And can I tell you something? The vital part of living by faith is that there's this wonderful thing that God's given us. You know what it's called? A question mark. I can't stand it. How's it going to work? God, how's this going to work? God, I'd really like to know how this is going to work. I'm responsible for this, God. So I even kind of like put it back against God, right? Now, God, you want me to do this, and I don't know how you're going to have me do this, but God, you need to let me know how you're going to do this, right? Okay? And so I do that, and God says, it's great. You can have the question mark and have faith, or you can have the answers and not have contentment. See, without the question marks and mysteries in life, there is no faith. If I have to know everything, there's no faith. You know, a few years ago, it's probably been decades ago, I remember them coming out and saying they think they found Noah's Ark. Somewhere up in the mountain, they found a piece of whatever, you know, and they're all, and people were talking, man, do you hope they find it? And part of me is like, that'd be really cool if they find it. The other part of me is like, pretty cool just to have faith in God that what God said happened. But my flesh is like, but if I knew, if I could see it, if I could touch it, then I would know for sure. What I'm ultimately saying is I'm putting my faith in something else. And there's going to be mysteries in your marriage. There's going to be mysteries in your Christian life. There's going to be mysteries in your family. There's going to be mysteries in your job. There's going to be things in your life that you just don't get. And you can ask God why. But sometimes God's going to say, your faith is more important than knowing why. And that doesn't make us very warm and fuzzy. And I wonder sometimes in my life that I just need to admit sometimes there's things in my life I just don't know and I just don't understand. And it doesn't mean I'll never understand, maybe not at this point, but at some point we'll understand. We may not understand it. There's things in my life right now that have happened that I look back in the last 10 years and the last 15 years and say, God, I have no idea how you're going to use this for your glory. And God just says, you don't have to. Because it's more than about me. It's the grand picture. It's the grand scale of what it is. I don't have to know what it is. There's going to be some things in your life you'll never understand until you see Jesus. And by the way, by then, you will be fully known. And you know all things. We'll see him as he is, and we'll be like him. There's some things in life we just don't, or just won't ever know. We just won't ever know. But there is a day we'll understand, and we got to live by faith. And faith assumes that I don't see everything or know everything, that I will have unanswered questions in life. That's what faith tells us. And Solomon knew that life doesn't satisfy for that kind of person who requires answers to all the questions. Can I tell you, if you're a person that needs all the answers, you probably struggle in the faith department. But remember that verse we go back to, but without faith it is impossible to please him. Without faith it's impossible to please him. By the way, this whole book of Ecclesiastes is just one big investigation of Solomon's meaning in life. And there's just some answers that we're not going to get from the questions. And we have to be careful in what we do. And if I may say this, and I have it underlined in my notes, after all, we don't live on explanations. We live on promises. In your life as a believer, you don't live on explanations. You live on promises. And God never did answer all our questions in life. And just like he did for Job, you know what? He doesn't answer all the questions because knowledge in the mind doesn't guarantee healing in the heart, by the way. Some of us in this room have such hurt in our heart. And if we're like, if God, you could just let me know why this happened, I'd be okay. Knowledge in the mind does not mean you're going to have healing in your heart. It doesn't mean that. God, if you just tell me, I'd feel better. Probably not. God knew you wouldn't. The reason God sometimes won't give you the answer to the hard questions in life is because he knows your heart better than you, and he knows my heart better than me, and he knows I would turn from him. The answer wouldn't give healing. It would cause division. And that's hard for us to do sometimes. And like I said, there's nothing wrong in life with asking God why. But may I encourage you with this, brothers and sisters, but when you ask God why, please consider to whom you're talking. Nothing wrong with asking God why, but just think about how you ask. You ever have your kids walk up to you one day and say, hey, get me a, and you're like, cool, you want to ask that in another way? Before you meet God, you want to do that? You know what it is? You're like, you want to try that again? I found it also in especially Southern Christian mothers. If a kid says something or does something, and a mom says, do it again, that is not an invitation, young person, for you to do it again. Okay? I was confused too. It's like, do it again. I'm like, nope, not going to do that. Some of you in this room are so scared to ever ask God why. It's okay to ask. But some of us in our room, we have to know the answers so badly that we approach a holy God like we approach somebody like our boss that we're not happy with. A child isn't doing what we want to do. We approach them the wrong way. It's okay to ask why, but just remember who you're approaching. Amen. It's important for us to remember those things. C.S. Lewis said this: to argue with God is to argue with the very power that makes it possible to argue at all. James Johnson said it probably the way I understand it better. He said, talking about arguing with God, he says, your arms are too short to box with God. And can I tell you, as long as you fight the hand of God, you will not learn the lessons he is attempting to place before you. As long as you fight his hand, you will not learn the lessons. And I cannot let this horizontal life overshadow the vertical life and what it means. I close with this example. I'll give you two examples if you don't mind. Let me just ask you a question. What if somebody came to visit your house? You invited them over for dinner, Sunday lunch, and when they got to your house, they started criticizing things. They didn't like the wall colors. They don't like the decorations. They don't like where you hung what picture you put over the kitchen table. They don't like anything that you have, and they just nitpick everything about you. And once that person finished their criticism, there's probably only one comment that you would make. Some of you need to remember in church, but there's one comment you would make. You'd probably say, whose name is on the deed to the house? And once you start paying the bills around here, you can get a vote in the decorating, right? Until then, keep your opinions and your feelings to yourself. And what I'm saying here is this again. No one knows the future in your life but God. So it's futile for you to speculate. It's futile for you to speculate and nitpick everything he's doing in the process. Because if you do that, there will be no satisfaction in your life. There will be no joy in your life. There will not be those things. Last thing I have is this. Albert Pujols, some of you may know from baseball, was a first baseman for the Los Angeles Angels and also for the St. Louis Cardinals. He was a World Series champion, is an 8-time All-Star, and is a recipient 3 times of the National League MVP. He was one of the most feared hitters in baseball. He reached the top of his game, but he said that ultimately is not what gave him real satisfaction. He was asked to speak at Lafayette Senior High School in Missouri, and Pujols told an audience of young boys, he says, as a Christian, I am called to live a holy life. My standard for living is set by God, not by the world. I'm responsible for growing and sharing the gospel. Then after some comments on humility, he told the guys this. He says, one way for me to be satisfied in Jesus is for me to stay humble. Humility is getting on my knees and staying in God's will for what God wants for me and not the world. And then he added this. It would be easy for me in all that I have to go out and do whatever I want. But those things only satisfy the flesh for a moment. Jesus satisfies the soul forever.
Amen.
I think Solomon got it, and I hope we do too. But the only way that you find true satisfaction is to turn your heart to God. If you don't know him as your Savior, trust him. And if you know him as your Savior, trust him with your life. Let him be the one to satisfy you. Let Jesus be your world, and he will be enough. Jesus is enough. Because Solomon warns here in Ecclesiastes chapter 6 that only Jesus satisfies. Nothing else can. And if we're honest, he's the only one that makes sense in a pointless, crazy world sometimes. Is he your satisfaction? Let's stand together. Father, I thank you so much for this day, and Lord, it's time we can be together. Lord, just being able to look at your word. And Lord, I know we took some time today, but God, I thank you that I know these things ultimately we talked about today don't bring satisfaction. But God, I still want to chase them. If I'm honest, in my heart, I want to chase them. Help me to realize that a God-centered life, a life of loving God first, then God's blessings, is the only way for us to live as Christians and have fulfillment and contentment. Be with my brothers and sisters in this room today, God, that are struggling, Lord. If there's something in their life they need to deal with, may they deal with it. If it's a wife and a husband, they need to talk about stuff. If it's a son, it's a daughter, it's whatever it is, a boss, an employee, God, just whatever it is, may we not use other things in life as a diversion from dealing with the real issues. God, I pray you'd help us to be able to say, are we satisfied? We can say yes, because we are in Christ, and Christ is all I need. Thank you for all you do in Christ's name. As Brent plays, just with your head bowed and eyes closed just for a moment, I want you to ask yourself that question. Are you satisfied in your life right now? And if you think to yourself, I will be once I, that's probably going to tell you that Christ is not the center. He's not the one you're chasing ultimately. And there may be some things in your life, and friendships and relationships and family that you need to get right. I'm telling you, don't let the other things be a diversion. Don't let them be a distraction. Take care of those things. Let me give you these quick words of announcements real quick. Ladies' Bible study is Tuesday night this week, so Ladies Tuesday at 6:30 down at the fellowship, actually not fellowship hall, excuse me, you're going to be up at the pavilion, and I think you're doing fair food, if I understand it correctly. So if you have any questions about that, you can see Miss Jan, and she'll help you out with that. So ladies up at the pavilion there Tuesday, and who doesn't like fair food? I think we all like fair food. And then also, for you to know, teenagers, I believe Brother Will has and Miss Sarah have a activity this Saturday at their house doing a pumpkin carving, bashing, whatever with pumpkins. They're going to have a lot of fun there. 6 o'clock, 8 o'clock, is that right?
Yeah.
6 to 8, $5, and you can get free, your kids can have an activity there for a little while, so you can have fun there. And then also want to remind you of these last two things is November the 7th, after Life Groups, November the 7th, we're having a baby shower for Will and Sarah, and we're excited for them. So we're going to encourage you to come. Life Group starts at 6, so at 7 o'clock. If you're not able to come to small groups that night, at 7 o'clock, we're going to have a baby shower for them. We'd love for you to come, be a part of that. This is for guys and girls. Guys, we need somebody to talk to. And so, be there for that. And so it's on November 7th. I hope you make plans to be there for that. And then Homecoming Sunday is November the 14th, okay? We're going to have dinner on the grounds. It's not too far away. Coming up, it's at the same service times at 10:30 that day. We won't have a service that evening, but that's coming up on November the 14th. And then finally, our candy drop drive-through, it's like we did the last few years about the trunk or treat. That's going to be on Sunday evening, October 31st from 4:30 to 6. If you're able to decorate a car for that, let me know. We've got some spots still available. We do this as a fun outreach, a safe alternative, but also a fun outreach. We give people gospel tracts. We also give them information about our church. We'd love for you to come and be a part of that. I know there's a lot going on, a lot of announcements. Just wanted you to know. And again, God bless you. Thank you for coming. Hope you have a great day.